How does a failed artist from a small Austrian town become one of the most infamous dictators in human history? The story of Adolf Hitler's rise is not just about one man. It's a chilling account of ambition, manipulation, and a nation's descent into darkness. Today, we're tracing that very path from the shadowy corners of Vienna to the absolute pinnacle of power in Germany. Welcome to our deep dive into the rise of the Nazi dictator. Our story begins not in the halls of power, but in the gritty streets of Vienna. Here, a young Adolf Hitler struggled, dreaming of a career as an artist only to face rejection and poverty. This period of his life, filled with frustration and resentment, planted the seeds of the radical ideology that would later define him. He absorbed the potent mix of nationalism and anti-Semitism that swirled in the city's political climate, ideas that would fester and grow. Then came World War I for Corporal Hitler. The war was a defining experience. Served on the Western Front, was wounded, and decorated for bravery. But it was Germany's ultimate defeat and the subsequent Treaty of Versailles that truly radicalized him. He, like many Germans, felt a deep sense of betrayal and humiliation, what they called the stab in the back. This burning anger and fervent nationalism became his driving force as he returned to a defeated and chaotic post-war Germany. The political landscape of the Weimar Republic was a battlefield of ideas. In Munich, Hitler found his stage. He joined a small, obscure group called the German Workers' Party. With his powerful, almost hypnotic oratory skills, he quickly rose through its ranks, rebranding it as the National Socialist German Workers' Party, or the Nazi Party for short. He gave fiery speeches in beer halls, blaming Germany's woes on Jews, communists, and the politicians who signed the Versailles Treaty. He offered simple answers to complex problems, and his message resonated with a growing number of disillusioned Germans. In 1923, Hitler felt bold enough to seize power directly. The Beer Hall Putsch, an attempted coup in Munich, was a spectacular failure. Hitler and his followers tried to march on Berlin, but they were quickly suppressed. Hitler was arrested and put on trial for treason. But what should have been the end of his political career became a turning point. He used the trial as a platform for his nationalist propaganda. Turning his courtroom into a stage and gaining nationwide notoriety, he was seen by some not as a traitor, but as a patriot. Sentenced to 5 years in Landsberg prison, he served only 9 months. But this time was crucial. In the relative comfort of his cell, he dictated his political manifesto and autobiography, Mein Kampf for My Struggle. This book was a blueprint for his future. It laid out his racist ideology, his territorial ambitions for living space or Lebensraum in Eastern Europe, and his vision for a totalitarian state. Upon his release, Hitler was more determined than ever. But he had learned a valuable lesson. Power would not be won through a violent putsch, but through the legal, democratic system he so despised. He would destroy democracy from within. For the rest of the 1920s, the Nazi Party remained on the political fringe. Germany was experiencing a period of relative stability and prosperity known as the Golden Twenties. People were less receptive to Hitler's message of hate and despair. But then, disaster struck. The Wall Street crash of 1929 triggered the Great Depression, and its effects on Germany were catastrophic. Banks failed, businesses collapsed, and unemployment skyrocketed. Millions of Germans were thrown into poverty and desperation. The political center collapsed and people flocked to the extremist parties of the left and right. This was the moment Hitler had been waiting for. The chaos and misery of the Great Depression were the fertile ground in which Nazism would flourish. Hitler and his propaganda minister, Joseph Goebbels, launched a relentless campaign. They held massive rallies, plastered posters everywhere, and used modern technology like radio and film to spread their message. They promised to restore order, put people back to work, and make Germany strong again. They provided scapegoats for the nation's suffering and offered a vision of a glorious national rebirth. In election after election, the Nazi Party's share of the vote surged. By 1932, they were the largest party in the German parliament, the Reichstag. The established political elite, the conservative old guard, thought they could control Hitler. In a fatal miscalculation, they decided to appoint him Chancellor in January 1933. Hoping to use his popular support for their own ends. They believed they could tame the beast. They were catastrophically wrong. Hitler had no intention of being a puppet. Within weeks of taking office, a mysterious fire gutted the Reichstag building. Hitler seized the opportunity, blaming the communists and convincing the aging President Hindenburg to sign the Reichstag Fire Decree. This decree suspended basic civil liberties, freedom of speech, assembly, and the press were gone overnight. It was the first major step towards dictatorship. Political opponents were rounded up, arrested, and sent to the first concentration camps. The final nail in the coffin of German democracy came just a month later with the Enabling Act. Pushed through a parliament intimidated by the presence of Nazi stormtroopers, this law gave Hitler's cabinet the power to pass laws without the Reichstag's consent for 4 years. It effectively made Hitler a legal dictator. With this absolute power, he moved swiftly to consolidate his rule. He banned all other political parties, turning Germany into a one-party state. He brought all aspects of society under Nazi control: the police, the courts, education, and the press. This process was called Gleichschaltung, or coordination. Swastika was everywhere. The Führer's will was now the law of the land. Democracy in Germany was dead. The Third Reich had begun. The rise of Adolf Hitler was not an accident of history. It was the result of a perfect storm, a charismatic and ruthless leader, powerful and hateful ideology, economic desperation, and the failure of democratic institutions to protect themselves. This story serves as a powerful and enduring warning, shows how quickly freedom can be lost, how societies can be seduced by promises of order at the cost of liberty, and why we must always remain vigilant against the forces of hatred and tyranny. Thank you for joining us on this historical journey. Understanding how these events unfolded is crucial to ensuring they are never repeated. If you found this analysis insightful, please hit the like button and subscribe to our channel for more deep dives into the pivotal moments that have shaped our world. See you next time.